Just fine. CalmWaters. Summary. Rain deals with a fever while trying to keep an eye on Luz, Amity, Hunter, and Willow. Work text. Rain had never felt their age until this moment, as they attempted to keep up with Luz and her friends as they wandered around Bonesborough. The kids were looking for a bookshop that had supposedly reopened. In Rain's opinion, it would have been best if they had gotten the exact address ahead of time, but searching for it seemed to be half of the fun. Luz was walking far ahead of them with Hunter beside her. From the sound of it, they were engaged in a friendly argument. Willow and Amity had stayed closer to Rain, their heads close together as they talked in quiet voices, small smiles on their faces. "Luz, Hunter," Rain called, regretting every choice they had made that day. "Wait up, I think we're going in circles." Why had they agreed to chaperone 4 kids, again? Why did these 4 kids even need chaperoning? They had all been involved in saving the Boiling Isles, surely. Oh, Rain rubbed a hand across their face as Hunter accidentally ran into someone and was immediately challenged to a duel. Emotions had been running high with everything that had happened. But a duel still seemed a bit much. Rain intervened with a quick, "He's very sorry, we'll get out of your way now." Hunter would likely not have gotten into a random duel by himself, but Luz, who liked to watch duels solely because of the cool spells, was quite the influence on him. Well, anyone was an influence to Hunter. "We're totally going in circles, guys," Willow walked over. "We've passed the same bookstore 5 times. The same bookstore? Amity frowned, the 5 actually paying attention to their surroundings for the first time in a while. "Oh. Hey, Rain, we found the bookstore." Luz bounced on her toes, grabbing Amity's hand and pulling her girlfriend inside without another word. Now Rain knew why Ida had suggested they go along with the kids. The 4 were absolutely capable of going places without a chaperone. It just took them forever. Rain rubbed their temples as they followed Willow and Hunter inside. They'd had a headache since they'd woken up that morning. Their throat was dry as well, with an irritating tickle in it. They had elected to ignore that. Thankfully, the somewhat scarce selection of books that the newly opened store had was enough to occupy the teenagers, for a little while, at least. Neither Amity nor Hunter seemed to be much of a talker around adults, Rain had found, but when they were with Luz they could ramble on for hours about specific subjects that interested them. Literal hours. Ida had timed one of Luz and Amity's passionate conversations once. The slight tickle in their throat grew and they coughed into the crook of their arm, suppressing a shiver as a breeze blew by from the open window. Ida and the kids had been sick a week ago, just something quick that had passed within days, thankfully. Ida was stubborn, usually, but she was impossible when she was ill. Rain had thought they had been spared from it. Maybe not. It didn't matter, though, they'd be fine either way. The nature of their work over the past few years, especially under Bellows, had required them to be. Rain's gaze shifted to Hunter, who was engaged in what seemed to be an invigorating conversation with Willow, an open book held between them. It had been even worse for Hunter in the Emperor's Coven, Rain knew. They'd been forced to turn a blind eye to it for a long time, for the sake of security, not for themselves, but everyone else fighting on the same side as them. Rain couldn't give up their position. People had been counting on them. Still, there was a bitter feeling in their stomach as they thought about it. There always was. "Look, it's a bunch of fairy tale stuff." "I've never seen the Boiling Isles type of it." Luz held up a book with a dreamily painted castle on it. Rain just raised an eyebrow in response, leaning more heavily against the wall. Luz flipped open to the first few pages, pulling a face at the rather gruesome depiction of a murdered demon in the illustration. She closed immediately after. You know what, that makes sense. What does? Willow asked, peeking over at the book. I remember this. My dad's used to read me a story from it every night. The kids became lost in conversation again. Rain swallowing heavily. The ache in their head had retreated to a low throb. However, it had promptly been replaced by an intensely sore throat. That was great. Rain closed their eyes, keeping their ears alert as the kids continued looking through books, Luz debating audibly with herself over which of the two books she had found that she should buy. With the snails Ida had given her for successfully cleaning Hootie as a dare. Rain rolled their eyes fondly, digging a hand into their pocket. Here, Luz. How much is the second book? Oh, no, you don't have to. Luz shook her head, Rain looking down at the second book anyway and giving her the amount she needed. They retreated back to their previous position once Luz had been relieved of what was likely an intense moral conflict. In Luz's case, how can I measure my interest in two equally cool subjects, Ida? How? Rain shivered again, this time without a breeze from the window prompting it. They shifted their position to hide it out of habit, another cough bubbling up in their chest and pushing its way out with an unnecessary amount of force. Are you all right? Rain was met with the intense gaze of Willow, and they quickly looked away. Just fine, they managed to rasp out. MHM. Hopefully, that was that. Also, hopefully they'd leave soon. Getting away from crowds and loud noises was sounding more and more appealing by the minute. They could say something, of course, Luz would understand and would probably insist on walking back to the owl house with them. But they didn't. Their lips were sealed by a force they despised and relied on at the same time. Old habits were quite difficult to break, especially when you created them in high-stress environments. Being an undercover revolutionary probably qualified as high stress. That's really not right. Luz now was squinting at a book Amity was holding, a picture of a rather terrifying giraffe on the open page. I can take you guys to see real giraffes next week. I'm going to be with my mom. No, it is right. We already saw one, Willow said. I have the picture somewhere. I'll show you later. Their necks are so cool though, Hunter said, his eyes wide, even if the rest of them is creepy. He tended to have that reaction to many creatures now, magical or not. Rain could get it, in a way. Just like musical instruments were easier for Rain to understand than people, and stories were in Luz's case, animals were for Hunter. All four teenagers' heads turned in Rain's direction as they coughed yet again, trying to muffle the sound with their sleeve. They bought whatever books they had decided on and exited the shop, Luz walking close to Rain now, not wandering ahead. She waved goodbye to Hunter and Willow, who had their own things to do as the afternoon approached, taking Amity's hand after. I'm going to walk Amity home, you go on ahead, she said to Rain. They nodded and walked off. Perhaps they weren't the best chaperone, but in their defense, Ida's exact words had been, if you actually want to go, just make sure they don't get horribly lost. Again. They'd only gotten horribly lost in the beginning, so as far as Rain was concerned, their job had been completed. They smiled as Luz walked off. She was a good kid. Amity was too. So were Hunter and Willow, and all of their friends. Kids who had been drawn into battles because of the adults' failure to. Rain rubbed their temples. They'd been over this with themselves time and time again in the past few months. They'd done the best they could. They all had. And in the end, they'd won. Because of Luz, a 15-year-old girl who woke up in the dead of night from dreams about temporarily losing her family and fighting a madman. Stop, Rain said out loud to themselves, beginning to cough yet again, tears springing to their eyes because of the force, not because their legs were shaking and their mind wouldn't calm itself. Of course not. They immediately began to calm down once they were in front of the owl house, the thought of Ida bringing a state of peace to their mind. Which was ironic, because Ida was even more prone to chaos than Luz, when she didn't have any young eyes watching her, and sometimes even when she did. Ida had put her own spin on parenting, that was for certain. Rain. King rolled off the couch as they opened the door, running over and climbing up their leg. Rain had come to learn over the past few months that this was a sign of affection from Ida's son. They smiled and held their leg out, giving King an opportunity to slide down. Where's Luz? Ida poked her head in, the smile on her face dropping slightly as she took a long look at them. She's walking Amity home, Rain murmured, swallowing and trying to stop themselves from wincing at the pain, even in front of Ida. Briefly, they remembered how desperately they'd wanted her to be open with them, back when they had been dating the first time. They hadn't been angry that she hadn't been able to. Mostly, they'd been disappointed. They swallowed a cough and crossed the room, letting their head fall against Ida's chest, an invitation for affection. Ida put a hand on their back in response, letting it rest there for a few minutes. Rain had been sick quite a bit when they were young, and Ida knew exactly what they needed to feel comfortable. They'd known each other since they were children. The realization truly cemented in Rain's brain for the first time. It's been so long, they rasped. You're definitely way too warm. Ida's hand moved to rest against their neck. Did you tell Luz at all? She would have had you back here immediately. Rain shook their head. Rain. You're making me a hypocrite after all of the Ida's eyes flickered in King's direction, stuff I pulled. Stop. I am. Rain protested, because just crossing the room for comfort felt wrong now. Ida gave them a fond-looking response. Nerds, King said, very helpfully and completely unprompted. Rain would have to spend more time with them to at least balance Ida's unique influence. The door was thrown open just as Rain settled down on the couch, Luz standing there with leaves and a bit of mud caked into her hair. That could mean a number of things, none of which Ida particularly cared about. Luz! King sprung up and darted over, neither Rain nor Ida getting in the way of the joyous reunion between brother and sister. Luz and King had been clinging on to each other extra tight after everything, something no one could fault them for. Rain had heard most of what had happened with Bellows and the collector from Luz, during a late night when neither of them could sleep. Could they have prevented that, in any way? Could they have? Rain groaned, rubbing a hand over their face. Luz put a hand on their shoulder. Are your thoughts being annoying? She asked. They raised an eyebrow, but nodded. I get that. You know what helps though? Cuddle pile. Luz snuggled beside Rain on the couch, King eagerly joining her, curling up on their lap. Ida gave a very long roll of her eyes, but joined in upon Luz and King's begging. Rain leaned their head against Ida's shoulder, one of their hands over her chest. They could feel the steady rising and falling of her breathing. They were already starting to feel better.